the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
from the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
Okay, so you've sent us some really important and honestly quite disturbing materials recently, looking at current events and these rising concerns about anti-Semitism, especially, it seems, on college campuses. So for this deep dive, we wanted to tackle one of these head on. Really, the goal is to sort of get under the skin of a key article you shared, understand its arguments, the connections it's drawing.
Right.
And just give you a clearer picture of the context, without getting totally overwhelmed by all the noise around it.
Exactly. And the piece we're focusing on, it's a pretty provocative title. Universities have blood on their hands in violence against Jews.
Yeah.
It centers on a very recent, very tragic event, and it explicitly tries to draw a line between that incident and the atmosphere on university campuses.
Okay.
So we'll be looking closely at what the article presents. It pulls in things like social media posts, references other news outlets, organizations. Our aim is really just to distill the main claims and the info it uses, make it clear and, easy to track.
Okay, so let's start there with the awful event at the core of this article. It talks about the deaths of Yaron Lishkinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram. The article identifies them as employees of the Israeli embassy.
Yes, and it happened on a Thursday, apparently, as they were leaving the Capitol Jewish Museum in Northwest D.C. The article seems to emphasize the timing and the location.
Why do you think? To highlight something specific?
Well, maybe the public nature of it, its closeness to a Jewish cultural site. But what the article really zeroes in on are the alleged statements and motivations of the accused killer, Elias Rodriguez.
Right.
He reportedly shouted, "I did it for Gaza," and was chanting "Free Palestine" at the scene, which of course immediately brings up questions about what might have influenced this.
And the article dives into that, suggesting a kind of background for Rodriguez. It mentions his reported involvement in different leftist causes, things like Marxist-Leninist groups.
And the anti-Israel movement specifically. And it also notes there's an ongoing investigation into potential terrorist connections. It's definitely painting a picture of a particular ideological leaning.
Which the article seems poised to link to the violence itself. It feels like it's building a case, connecting his alleged views to these broader movements.
I think that's fair to say. By highlighting these reported affiliations, the article starts laying the groundwork for its argument about the university environment, perhaps suggesting these are ideologies, fostered on campus.
Yeah, I see that. The article also includes something really heartbreaking, an ex-post from Tel Naim. She's a spokeswoman for the Israeli embassy.
Yes.
And she talks about the couple's wedding plans, contrasting it with how they died. It really brings home the human cost here.
Absolutely. That personal detail, it really hits hard. It underscores the tragedy. And then the article pivots to some political reactions. It mentions President Trump's post on Truth Social.
What did that say?
He condemned the killings, called them anti-Semitic, and linked them to hatred and radicalism more broadly. So these reactions kind of set the stage for the article's main point.
Which is?
Well, this is the core assertion, and it's a big one. The article flat out claims that U.S. college campuses are, quote, training grounds of hatred and radicalism.
Wow.
And that there's a direct link between them and this violence in D.C.
That's a huge accusation. Does it name specific universities?
Oh, yes. It points fingers directly at Harvard, Columbia, UCLA, Northwestern, and others, calling them incubators of hate.
Incubators of hate. Okay, so what's the mechanism, according to the article? How are they supposedly doing this indoctrinating?
Well, a key thing it points to is the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions.
Right, aimed at putting pressure on Israel.
Exactly. And the article frames BDS activity on these campuses as basically a form of anti-Semitism. It's just the universities are letting this happen.
So it's not just BDS.
No, beyond that, it argues universities are tolerating, maybe even enabling, violent anti-Israel protests and direct threats against Jewish students. The idea is that this sort of permissive environment, maybe in the name of free speech, is fostering the radicalism it connects to the D.C. attack.
And it draws that connection very sharply, using that phrase, sown the seeds, now bearing the strange fruit of violence. It implies a direct cause and effect.
A very direct implication, yes. It really suggests campus culture directly led to this outcome. It makes you ask, okay, what specific evidence links that campus environment to this specific act of violence?
Good question. So how does the article try to bridge that gap? Does it offer more context on the universities?
It does. It shifts to talking about what it calls an explosion of anti-Semitism, particularly since the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attacks on Israel. That date seems to be a real marker in the article's narrative.
Okay. And what does it say happened on campuses after that?
It paints a picture of college students, describing some as privileged kids, allegedly, celebrating the attacks, chanting "Death to Israel" slogans. Gosh. And it claims they're often joined by leftist professors and that administrations are kind of backing this up, or at least allowing it, under the umbrella of free speech or DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right, DEI initiatives. The article seems to view those frameworks very critically in this context.
It certainly does. It suggests these policies are being maybe misused or misinterpreted to permit what it sees as anti-Semitic speech and actions. And to show the scale, it brings in that ADL audit statistic.
Which was?
A nearly 900% increase in anti-Semitic incidents over the last decade. But more pointedly, an 84% jump just on college campuses since 2023. These numbers are clearly there to bolster the claim of an escalating crisis in universities.
Okay, that's a stark figure. Does it offer any, on-the-ground perspectives?
It does. It quotes David Goldenberg from the ADL Midwest. He talks about a spike in anti-Semitism, specifically in Chicago, and this feeling among Jewish people there that they're less safe. So it brings it down to a more local level.
And then, wasn't there a connection made back to the accused killer, Rodriguez?
Yes. The article makes a point of mentioning he got his English degree from the University of Illinois, Chicago.
Ah.
Now, it doesn't explicitly say his education caused this, but placing that detail right after calling universities incubators of hate, well, the implication seems pretty clear.
Right, it guides the reader's thinking. And it mentions the University of Chicago specifically, too, doesn't it? It calls it a hotbed of anti-Semitism since October 7th.
It does, yeah. Even while acknowledging that the administration there did take some action, like clearing encampments and stating neutrality, the article suggests the problem runs deeper than just, protests or official statements.
So what evidence does it give for that claim about UChicago?
It includes an account from a student there, Eitan Fisher. He talks about the Students for Justice in Palestine chapter, the SJP. He alleges they supported the murder of Jews right after October 7th and put out a statement calling for consequences for Israel supporters.
Wow, okay. That's a specific, serious allegation from a student's perspective.
Very specific. And it's presented as direct evidence of the kind of sentiment the article is talking about. It also mentions another rally at UChicago, apparently a year after the attacks, with chants like, "Resistance is justified when people are occupied," and "Long live the Intifada."
Okay, so those examples are used to paint a picture of ongoing, deeply rooted issues on that campus, according to the article.
Exactly. That seems to be the intent.
So the article lays out the problem, the alleged campus link. What about solutions or responses? Does it discuss government action?
Yes, it shifts to the Trump administration's approach. It highlights stated plans to combat anti-Semitism, specifically by threatening to cut federal funding to universities seen as allowing anti-Semitic environments.
And has that actually happened?
The article details reported actions against Harvard specifically. It says the Department of Health and Human Services moved to cut $60 million in funding, citing failures to address anti-Semitism and discrimination.
$60 million, that's substantial.
Very. And maybe even more significantly, it mentions the Department of Homeland Security terminating Harvard's SEVP certification. That's the Student Exchange Visitor Program.
Which means?
Effectively, as the article puts it, ending Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students.
Whoa, that's a massive step. What was the justification given?
According to the article, DHS reasoned that Harvard had allegedly created an unsafe campus environment by allowing anti-American pro-terrorist agitators to harass people, including Jewish students.
And it includes a quote reinforcing that.
Yeah, from Secretary Kristi Noem, saying enrolling foreign students is a privilege, not a right, and implying Harvard refused to do what was needed. It frames the action as a consequence of Harvard's alleged inaction.
Okay. And the article draws a political contrast here too, right?
It does. It presents these Trump administration actions as decisive, coming after what it calls waffling by President Biden on the issue. So it injects a clear partisan angle into the response narrative.
But then, interestingly, it does mention a counterargument.
Yes. It brings up an Axios piece quoting Lawrence Strauss, a professor at American University. Her concern, as reported, is that these actions by the Trump administration could actually backfire, could stoke further animus against Jews.
That's a really important counterpoint, the idea of unintended consequences.
Absolutely. And the article notes, maybe relevantly, that American University itself was one of those schools that got a warning letter from the Department of Education about protecting Jewish students.
So the concern isn't isolated, but how does the main article we're discussing react to that counter-argument?
It dismisses it quite strongly, calls it disordered thinking, and attributes it to the speak your truth left. So the article clearly rejects the idea that these measures could be harmful.
Okay, very clear stance there. And how does it wrap up?
It brings it back to the immediate event, including a statement from Attorney General Pam Bondi condemning the killings in D.C. and promising prosecution. It sort of circles back to the legal response to the crime that started the whole discussion.
Right. So this deep dive, looking just at this one article, it really throws into sharp relief how complex and, frankly, how heated this whole issue is. You have this horrific violence, and then these incredibly serious allegations aimed at universities, linking their environments directly to it.
Yeah, and it's crucial, I think, for you listening to remember this is one specific perspective we've unpacked. It draws a very direct line connecting campus climate, specific movements, administrative policies, and ultimately this act of violence. It's a viewpoint clearly driven by deep concern about campus trends.
So as you think about all this, there's a lot to weigh up, isn't there? You've got the motivations behind violence, the actual responsibilities of universities. How do they ensure safety and free expression? Where's the line between free speech and hate speech? And then the impact of government stepping in.
Right. Does that help? Does it hurt? Does it have unforeseen consequences?
Exactly. So maybe the question to leave you with is this. Considering what this article presented, the arguments, the evidence it shows, what do you think is the most critical piece to focus on as we try to address these concerns? And maybe more importantly, what other questions does this whole thing raise for you? What haven't we covered that feels essential to understanding this?
Can make it make sense? Deep dive podcast show. Let's dive in. In the heart of this nation, under skies so blue, there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart